Welcome back. You're still watching the news review on Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV. We continue with the news review this morning, and as I promised, just as we were on a break, my panel grew bigger. Brian Weke and Eric Wenjohi have joined us. Good morning, gentlemen. Karibuni sana. Just before the break, we were discussing this cholera outbreak in Nairobi. Finally, it's hit 5-star hotels. Now everyone is talking about it. But the very interesting headline, rather cartoon on the Daily Nation, where now the lower cadre of Nairobians are complaining that these big guys are even taking away our diseases, because hitherto we thought of cholera as a poor man's disease. But finally, once it hits, and we're talking about big hotels being shut down in Nairobi just to try and contain the disease. The first case that was reported was at a wedding in Karen, high-end wedding in Karen. 2 cabinet secretaries were hospitalized with cholera last week. The headlines continued. Before that, of course, even the Ministry of Health was denying through tweets that cholera had been reported in one of the high-end hotels in Nairobi. Now, yesterday, the CS came out and said, yes, we are shutting down these hotels. It's very interesting, but looking at this headline that you are reading on the Standard, and we're talking about now reports that this research was conducted and made public as early as January, where KEMRI, the Kenya Medical Research Institute, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, had advised the ministry not to license any untrained food handlers as early as January. Of 218 food samples collected from 149 vendors, 34% are contaminated with various disease-causing germs. Now, the most highly contaminated with fecal coliforms, which analysis showed to carry the disease-causing bacteria E. coli, were sausages, smokies, and kachumbari. Now, according to Cindy's, according to the report, it says this may have been due to the excessive post-handling process, since it involves cutting of the sausages, inserting the kachumbari. Now, this is the usual food we eat regularly in Nairobi. Other highly contaminated foods were mutura, for those who love mutura, ugali and madodo, chapododo. The report appears in the International Journal of Innovative Research and Advanced Studies. It is not a lie. This is a report that exists. The authorities had been told. They did not act on it until CSs were hit, until a wedding in Karen is hit, until a 5-star hotel is hit in Nairobi. What does it say about our society, Brian?
I think first and foremost we have to demystify certain things, certain stereotypes. You know, I've had Mark saying that it used to belong to guys from Islam.
I didn't see it. Why are you putting words in my mouth?
You know, that misnomer that cholera is a poor man's disease, I think we need to demystify it. Cholera is a disease like any other. It does not know where you come from. It does not know whether you're poor or rich. It does not know whether you come from the slums or from the high-end areas. And by the way, for the record, this issue of cholera started in May. And now we actually quickly headed to August. And nothing happened. You know, this, what I would call, he calls it knee-jerk reaction. I call it the popcorn approach. You know, when the popcorn is hot, it pops. Yes. When it is cold, it does not pop. Now, that's how our government works. You know, if it reaches a level where people can actually get cholera in 5-star hotels, then it shows clearly that our level of awareness, our level of handling of processes, our level of not really, it means that all these high-end hotels are actually not following procedures.
Yes.
Because the law is very clear. Forget about the KEMRI research you're talking about. Look at the laws that governs handling of food. They are quite procedural. They're quite adequate. But guess what? We just don't follow that. Wait until, because I know State House outsources food from other hotels. Wait until now it hits the highest echelons of this society. You know, we have to be serious as a country. We have to be serious. And you know, issues of cholera, It's not a joke.
And Eric Wanjoy, you see the kind of, these are the foods we eat daily. Mutura, I'm sure, is something you enjoy from time to time. Sausages, ugali, madondo, chapodondo, even if you don't say it publicly. These are foods you get to enjoy from time to time. We're heading to the elections. It's 18, 19 days to the elections. We need people to come out and vote. This cholera outbreak could actually affect people because some people cannot even move.
Fred, the first thing that we need to understand is that this country has a problem of lack of communication for development experts. Very many people claim to be communication experts, but do we have specialized communication for development experts? Because by the time such a disease hits the country in the way that it has hit, you'd have expected that there are so many public service announcements, there are so many barazas, there are so many communication tools that have been used to communicate to the public.
We were in denial. Even when we got a report that one of the big hotels had cholera, the Ministry of Health is the one that came out with a statement and said that was not cholera.
And that is why I'm saying that we have a deficiency of communication for development practitioners. Because if we had such practitioners, they would have ensured that information is disseminated in time, people are engaged on time. Because if you look at cholera of all other diseases, it's the easiest disease to manage.
Yet at least
all what you need to do is to know something called public hygiene.
Yes.
Once you take that into consideration, you understand that if we use our communication tools very well, then we don't need to get into such small things. And cholera is something very small, by the way. What if we have a major catastrophe?
No, I
that's more than that.
with you. A friend of mine had cholera, and he said that he used 10 diapers in a day. Now, 10 diapers, I don't think it's small. You know, because the reality
you can afford diapers.
Adult diapers.
And the friend actually puts them on.
Well, follow son of my friend. But the reality of the matter is this cholera outbreak is not a joke, and I don't want to inflame the public, but it is actually an outbreak. And a nurse was telling me that from JQuat that she had to take a patient round 3-4 hospitals to find space because there's so many people who are in hospitals with this particular disease. Yes. And the problem with it, as you correctly put it, it is a bacterial disease. It's not viral, so it's not as strong as other diseases, but it is highly communicable. And as a nation, as you correctly put it, we need to be aware. We need to know that eating food that is raw, that is not cooked well, that you don't wash your hands when you come out of your toilet in 2017. But anyway, wash your hands when you come out of the toilet.
It's true what Bonawanjo is saying, because up till now we've not seen such kind of communication. That what should people do? What kind of foods should you avoid? How do you treat food? None of that. If you look at the dailies, there's no such communication. Yet it is an outbreak.
And I can say this for free. I totally reject the notion of waiting until something happens for you to go and shut down the hotels. How many hotels are you going to shut down? If you have to look at the open air markets that we have, look at somewhere like Burma. If the disease hits Burma, how many people are going to get affected by it?
Well, there's also politics. Look at other areas. There's also politics because as late as last week, there was communication that all food vendors in Nairobi should shut down. But apparently the county government of Nairobi has said it cannot happen now because of some laws here and there. It can only take effect 3 months from now. Surely, what does that mean? Just because elections are 18 days, you'd rather allow cholera outbreak to spread and not
we can do with cholera, but we can't lose votes. You know, I mean, and that's the unfortunate thing. I think I think on the government side and public health in particular, I think what needs to happen is we need to move away from the mode of always being on the defensive. You know, always coming out to defend something. I think it's always important, yes, to clarify, but it's also important to take responsibility. I think we don't see a lot of that. Whenever something happens, the first thing we see people coming out and saying, whether it is the county government or whether it is the ministry, to say, no, we've done our part. Yes, and I think we need to hear more in terms of what needs to be done to prevent certain.
It's interesting to see how politics affects something like this. That instead of fighting to contain an outbreak, you decide, oh, it's 18 days to the elections, so let's focus more on getting the votes. They might not come to vote for you because they might be
there. You know, Fred, somebody has just sent me a text who is actually a nurse. He's saying that issues to do with the cholera, you have to respond in 2 levels. Number 1 is prevention. But number two is response, so that you also ensure that it does not spread.
Correct.
Now, as we speak, and that's why again issues of politics still come to play in all these processes. As we speak, our nurses still, you see, they're on strike. Nobody is paying attention. Yes, and yet we have a crisis in the country. You know, nurses play a vital role on matters to do with prevention as well as a response, because again, as he says, we have a problem in terms of communication. And you know, sometimes even however you communicate, if Mark was to say it or myself, they will say, okay, who do they belong to?
Yes.
But if a nurse tells you that this is it, you take it very seriously. So again, issues of politics come to play in a number of these things. And I want to urge even our county government. Yes, we can play politics. Yes, as you're thinking, we can use cholera for the time being until election. You might not have people to vote for you. And of course, cholera does not know whether you are nurse or Jubilee.
Okay, it is 18 days to the elections. Let's now take a look at election-related headlines, and both dailies have such. On the Standard, major win for IEBC ahead of crucial ruling. On the Nation, 360,000 election jobs up for grabs. Let's start with this one for the Daily Nation. Of course, just 2 days ago, we were looking at how big this election is and how much money we are spending on the election probably. And we're saying this is perhaps the second most expensive election in the world, because we're spending 2,540 something shillings per voter on average. Yes, only second to Papua New Guinea that has spent 6,000 on average per person. I don't know what they the front page of the Daily Nation, 360,000 election jobs up for grabs, 262,665 polling clerks, 91,000 presiding officers, another 91,000 deputy presiding officers. This is a major operation. It's not something small, Mark.
Yeah, it's huge, because this particular election, given the laws, 700 people per polling station, the KIMS kit, the amount of vigilance you want to have on it, the constituency returning officers and the quality of people that you need to have, the IT support that you need. So yes, it is a huge undertaking. My question is, I don't know whether when they say up for grabs, it means they've already been grabbed or not yet, because 18 days to an election, you need these people to know what it is, because this election is unlike any other that we've ever had. So you cannot rely on past experience to be able to give expediency now. So I hope these guys have already been recruited and have been trained. If not, then a bit of a alarm mark there, because the IEBC needs to be very prepared. And let's be sure, remember, there's allowed the 5% per polling station that is allowed to vote non-biometrically, that they use the alternative system of verification. You need to have the people who can be trusted to carry out these levels to the highest standards expected. So they need to hire these people, they need to train them as quickly as possible, but 360,000 is a tall order.
Yes, because we thought that probably with the adoption of technology, now this would reduce the need for human resource. But it doesn't seem to be the case.
It doesn't seem to be the case.
Even with the technology, now it needs even more people to man the technology.
Yeah. But I think what is happening first is the issue of trust. I think our elections are becoming more and more expensive because of the issue of trust. I don't think we trust each other, no, we even trust the institution or even technology itself. So I think it's becoming more expensive. Now we are at 50 billion. The target was we were talking about 30 billions before. We are now moving close to 50 billion, and it becomes one of the most expensive elections, like you said, in the world. But having said that, I think having well-trained officers will be very important in this election, because this is one of the most competitive elections I think we are having after the introduction of multi-party democracy. And we can't bank just on technology. I think we need proper human resource.
But don't you think 360,000 people is just too huge a number for you to manage for a one-day process?
Yeah, but I think we have, if you look at the number of polling stations, if you look at the tasks that are there. I don't think this is a huge number, but my question is the preparedness of these people, and whether it's just 20 days to. I think they're still IBC is still recruiting staff. When are they going to train them? When are they going to get them on board and on site? They've not even tested these machines and all that. So I think the issue is more of preparedness.
To be fair to IBC, I think they've actually tested the machines to some extent. But if you go to Europe and look at some of these jurisdictions, when it comes to voting, and they do it electronically, and they use a lot of technology, and you see a polling station and you can't even see the officials manning it. There are very few. But in Kenya, with all this technology that we are taking in and struggling to work with, it does not seem to provide us the same relief.
Let me first say this. When the government came into power, they came and said that they would be creating what, 500,000 jobs per year? No, but anyway, that's an I'm not serious on that. Don't take me serious. When you talk about IEBC, we need to get something straight. This is an institution that has practitioners that are qualified, some that are very experienced, and most that mean well for this country. These guys are not driven by media agendas. You know, as the media, we try to create the agenda for the country, yeah? But when you look at behind the scenes what IEBC has been doing, this is not the first time that they're recruiting. The recruitment process began a long time ago. It has been a continuous process. The training has been a continuous process. So it's not like 360,000 will be employed between now and
so it is actually misleading.
I am aware
the jobs are up for grabs.
Exactly.
Right now,
I am aware. I am aware of, for instance, some polling stations. Staff. I have friends who have actually applied and they've gone for interviews for these polling stations, and they didn't do it now. They did it a while back. So it has been a continuous process. And I think what we need to do is to challenge IEBC to have some proper communication skills, because what lacks is the communication from IEBC that's coming to the fore. But if you were to go to their website, most of this information is there.
Yes.
Most of this, in fact, when people say that IEBC has not been engaging people in terms of public participation, I wonder what they're saying, because these guys actually engage people in public participation. They have reports. They have reports. No, they call for meetings.
I think it's just coming from Uganda.
They call for meetings. By the way, they call for meetings, that I am aware. I've actually attended some. They call for meetings. After the meetings, they have reports that they post on their website. Because of course they can't go giving every other Kenyan some of these
You're defining the problem right there.
You see, when it comes to
the thing is, even this headline, as you said, could be misleading. That they're up for grabs.
Correct.
Actually, recruitment has already happened.
Correct.
Yes. Don't you think that the IEBC should come out and say, yes, we've already done? Because some of these things, the same questions you asked about training, they should come out, because it's also to do with trust. That with 18 days to the elections, it could raise concerns that now is when you're recruiting 360,000 people, how will they be able to work? Don't you think IEBC has failed in terms of this?
I think for me, let's not focus on the wording of the headline. For me,
it is a splash on the Daily Nation.
And by the way, the processes had started, but it has not been executed. Not, of course, from the clerks and all this. And by the way, let me tell you the biggest problem, because now I want to speak to you as an expert in elections. We had proposed, you know, where we are as a country, the biggest problem, and you know, sometimes I hear NASA focusing on those bigger processes. Our biggest problem is these people on the ground. The IBC commissioners and the chair, he does not go to the polling stations. We have over 40,000 polling stations. Yes. So the people who man those polling stations are the problem. Now, of course, again, knee-jerk reaction. This is when we're hiring clerks. This is when we're hiring polling officials. This is when we're hiring people at that level. Because the only staff we have is the returning officer, who is permanent. Now, we had proposed something called a school of election. So that for you to be recruited, you have to have gone through a particular process. And the IEBC should actually come up with a serious school of election, so that you need to have either a diploma,
some certification.
Absolutely, some serious certification, so that you understand the magnitude of that particular job that you're going to do. You know, people don't even understand that according to the law, it has very punitive provisions of a polling officer being engaged in funny antics. Now, let me also tell you, as IBC is recruiting, politicians are also busy ensuring that they want to bring Obonyo, who is close to them. You know, we have created a very dangerous law, and people think it is a joke, that now declaration is being done at a constituency level.
Yes.
You know what that means? That declaration will be done by the presiding officer. So what stops a politician from bringing in Mark as a presiding officer, who...
As a presiding officer or the returning officer?
Presiding officer. You see, in every polling station, the guy in charge is called a presiding officer.
But the results that will be declared will be at constituency level?
Absolutely. So
by the returning officer.
And the returning officer is not in 300 polling stations that under his his or her jurisdiction. So the guy in charge of those polling stations is called a presiding officer. Guess what? That is being hired, and mainly by the returning officer at that particular level. Again, politicians would be able to ensure that they get people who are close to them. And that's the reason why these guys need to go through a rigorous process, so that they understand the magnitude of the job that they'll be appointed for.
Mark, you're an IT expert, and this technology we're using, the KIMS technology, needs some level of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you mismanage it to some level, it might not perform as expected.
Exactly. You know, it's a very specific system. It's a hardwired system. So we have to factor in the human error element of it. And how you factor that in is by rigorous training and repeat exercises. You cannot train someone once on how to use it and expect that they're perfect. You've got to train them through every scenario, every extreme scenario that is possible, you know, and so that you factor out the element of human error, because this is also the same instrument that will be used to transmit the data to constituency level and further to the national level. So the reality of the matter is this: as the IEBC, the first thing that should happen is they've got two mandates. Number one, as you said, train your people. Okay, but also manage the expectation of the average Kenyan. I have not seen an infographic, for example, telling a simple Kenyan in pictures, not in words, in pictures, put your finger here when you get there. This is the result that you expect. If you don't get this result, this is what will happen. This is very important, because any IT process has to be idiot proof. So it means when you make it, you assume everybody is an idiot, therefore everybody is able to use it, because you built it for failure.
Yes.
That's how you build. You build it to make sure that in case of failure, it can rise above that challenge. And the only way to do that in this particular case is to have rigorous training starting yesterday.
And interestingly, when the news was playing out this morning on Citizen TV, I had Ezra Chiloba, the CEO of IEBC, talking about the results transmission using this, that if you get the detail and you try to send it once, it fails. You send it twice, it fails. The third time you try it locks down the data. And you see, such things are down to human error.
That's the problem, because if I've been trained a day to the thing, I could forget my password. It's possible, right? I could forget how to log in. I could log in using the demo account that I was shown. So you need to test these things and test these things till this person is competent in his sleep.
360,000, does it add the percentage of human error, the probability of human error?
I'm not sure if it does, but the thing is, I think
Chiloba,
you see, IBC has come out.
360,000 human errors.
Yeah, but I mean, Chiloba has, Chiloba and IBC leadership have come out and assured Kenyans that they've been training their staff. And in fact, they've been emphatic on that. They've been saying, we've been training our staff and they're ready. So it's not that they're recruiting them now, I think. It's that they've been there and perhaps they're being trained. But I think my other concern will be on the level of civic awareness, civic education. I think we haven't done very well. It's not just enough for the staff of IBC to know how the systems function. I think it's also very important for the voters, electorates themselves to be aware of
how it works.
To understand. But we are going into these elections perhaps with the lowest level of civic awareness than it has ever been in the previous elections, and I think that is something that should worry all of us.
Fred, if I may add on to the discussion, the training part of it sounds very good, but let's first acknowledge a couple of things. Number one, 360,000 are not just polling staff.
Yes.
Read the newspaper very well. These are collective of all other roles, security included.
Polling clerks.
Yes.
But 91,000 are presiding officers. 91,000 others deputy presiding officers. That number is still very high.
Now, let's get to the gist of what is being discussed.
This thing is being handled by clerks. The Kims, it is clerks who handle it.
Actually, if you calculate including the clerks, it is headed to around 440 something thousand.
Now, let's get to the crux of the matter. 360,000 people who, in all definitions, can qualify to be called day casuals, because it's a very short-term contract. If we take the route that Brian has brilliantly brought forward of giving all these people diplomas, what does it mean? That IEBC is hiring people for a contract of 5 years so that they can come and do 1 week's job? We have to be very careful of what you're talking about. But now, does it mean that you're going to train people now, give them diplomas, then tell them you can go and work wherever you want to work, and when the elections come, you'll tell your employer you have another employer for that 1 week? We've got to be very practical.
It's a civic duty, the same way in the United States, every member of the public can be part of a jury in court. That probably even in terms of running elections, in case of a by-election, that you who is certified should be the one to...
I think the issue of certification cannot be tied to a job. It is ensuring that we have proper professionals and competencies for purposes of any other. And by the way, let me tell you, elections jobs are not only in Kenya. Election jobs are not only in IEBC. Election jobs are also in the civil society. Even now, when I was the chairman of the Election Observation Group, do you know how hard it was to get serious, competent people to actually do observation? So it is a big business. So don't look at it in a myopic manner that we are training you for purposes of just 1 week. We just want serious competencies in this country. But anyway, I want to come back to serious issues. Now, you know, when you talk about KM, serious issues, and this one, you have to listen to me.
I think we were discussing...
I thought so.
Because, you know, we were focusing more on transmission as regards technology. In the last election, when you had that... BVR failed. They never failed. The problem was you find that EVID machine that is in Mbita, it has data for Embakasi West. Because what happens is that now that we have 15 million voters, basically clerks have to sit down and extract per polling station and put it in that small machine. If you can actually, you have to decipher that data of is it how many millions?
19 million.
19 million Kenyans, and put it per polling station. Clearly, error will have to be there if you don't do it on time. If you don't test and check, and that's the reason why you're hearing opposition saying, if EVID fails, stop the elections.
And you know, the EVID and the other electronic devices used for the elections are subject to this headline on the Standard. Major win for IEBC ahead of crucial ruling. Commission won big yesterday when Kiai's case questioning entire electronic election system was thrown out. Yes, as ruling expected today on appeal against nullification of Al Ghurair tender. That story is on page 8. Let me just read the first paragraph so as to get the flow. The Electoral Commission has scored a significant victory following the High Court's rejection of a petition that questioned the electronic election system. Now, the decision on the Kenya Integrated Electronic Management System, this is what is referred to as KIMS, is a relief to the IEBC ahead of the elections, blah, blah, blah. I'm really looking for the gist of the story. Yes, because the petitioners had claimed that IEBC had overlooked the law on standards when they were procuring the devices. They also claimed that there was no public participation, nor did political parties engage in the process. Yes, but this was thrown out.
Yeah, you know, it's critical that it was thrown out, because one of the commissioners told me that their biggest worry was if the public participation on the Algurea tender was in question, then probably every other process would be in question. So this is an important win for this particular election, because there are so many things they've been tendering for, including, by the way, one of the reasons they suffer so much is they do not quite have a communications team in place. But that being said, the reality of the matter is this, that this election and many elections across the world is not going to be a perfect election. Let's just face the reality. It's a human process. It's a human process, and it's going to have flaws. Now, whether flaws mean conspiracy is another debate. That is what we need to differentiate between electronic flaws and conspiracies within the electoral system. I don't think this is an issue of conspiracy. I think it's a double issue of, one, preparedness vis-a-vis time, and communication on the part of the IEBC, because one of the ways you mitigate against situations like this is by, number one, informing the public. Why? Because if the public is informed, then they place an expectation demand on their polling clerks, their returning officers, and every person involved in the election to meet the standard that they were promised. Now, the problem is much of the public is walking into this election and we really don't know what to expect. In fact, we are sitting here, we all have political interest, and we don't know how many of these jobs have been filled. That is a serious misnomer. It means that we don't know what to expect. And the IEBC needs to begin to set the standard of what do you expect on voting day, what do you expect in terms of transmission, because the question is this: if transmission is happening electronically, should we wait 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? What time should I come to studio to commentate? I don't know. Why? Because the IEBC has not even communicated what is their time expectation after election. How long should it take to tally 700 votes? These are the questions. You see,
I like a lot
without
of
those,
yeah?
without those, then what we are walking into is a place where people will complain about a problem that is not a problem, because I was not told what to expect. It's sort of like when you go to a restaurant and you order a steak, and they give you, those restaurants which give you a little bit of food and some art around it. You'll complain because they did not meet your expectation, whether it's real or imagined.
I like a lot what he's saying about communication, and that has been the main problem IEBC has been facing. If, for instance, they're going to use these BVR kits, if it fails, and as he's correctly saying, that these are human-made machines, anything can happen, then what? You need to tell the public now, before it happens. Because, Fred, some time ago you taught me a lesson about this fake news story. And you're telling me that nowadays we've moved from fake news to alternative facts. You get, Nowadays we don't even call it fake news. All what you need to do is just take some small facts and now put in your agenda there. And it becomes either the fact or an alternative fact. But it's still a fact. In case something happens, then what? Will we wait for all these facts and alternative facts to start clashing? To get ourselves into a situation whereby there is so much dispute? Or can IBC up its game in terms of communication and start preparing the public now, psychologically, that yes, we have BVR kits, and yes, we are trying as much as possible to make sure that all BVR kits work. Yes, there is a probability that some may not work. And yes, if in case it doesn't work, this is what we are doing. These are the measures that we are taking in place to make sure that this is what happens to safeguard the election.
All these 360,000 election officials should be trained on the same.
And all those 360,000 and even more, because you also have IEBC permanent staff that also will be supervising some areas. They also need to be trained on some of these things, so that in case something happens, people are psychologically prepared. People won't go to the polling station to be told BVR kits are not working, and they decide to boycott it, or they decide to start shouting about the BVR kits. They will know that there is a fallback system, which comes about to what Brian was saying. What is the backup?
And that is also a subject of another court case. Because NASA is going to court and seeking clarification on this backup system. What exactly is it, and how is it going to work?
Brian is an expert on that. Brian, I just want to talk on public participation, because you're an expert on issues of elections. But I wanted to emphasize, in response to the issue of the backup, but I think the issue of public participation, I think it's extremely important. I think the populace that we're dealing with is the kind of populace that is now more aware. They don't want to sit at the tail end and wait to receive, I mean, to just receive the product. They want to be involved at each and every process. And I think IBC seems not to have realized that. They want to come out and tell people what they've done. But people want to work with them each and every step.
So you agree with this? People are petitioning against IBC's lack of public participation?
Yes, because if people are involved, I mean, the problem will be owned. But you see, if people are not involved, they're just informed at the tail end, I think there'll be a problem. So I think IBC need to devise ways of constantly engaging the public. How they do it, I think it's a matter that we need to.
The big question, I guess, is about defining what public participation is, right?
Absolutely. But I just want to come to the issue, and Mark will help us with this because he's an expert on IT issues. Now, first and foremost, just for your information, BVR is biometric voter registration.
Correct.
So that is provided for in the register. Now we have something called EVID. After you get the register, which is through biometric, then you have an electronic voter identification. Now the law provides for an integrated system. Integrated means this one is connected with this one.
So the KIMS has the BVR.
Absolutely. But we have a problem. It is not integrated because the register was there. So we just added more names and we uploaded it in the register. Now, again, and this is where the problem is, the register has 15 million. So automatically, if you had an integrated system, it would have sorted out people per polling station and threw it to the electronic voter identification device. Guess what? That is not the case. What they are doing is that with the 15 million, they have to get a flash disk per polling station. Pick as they put for 40-something thousand polling stations. And still they are doing it. At what point will we check and ensure that we have not taken data from Bita in Embakasi West? Is a big problem. Now let me come back to the issue of backup. First and foremost, if you ask me, if I was a commissioner, and because of the issues that we've had in the past, and I've said this before, there are places in this country that dead voter comes out to vote. There are places in this country that you get 100% voter turnout. It never happens anywhere. In Nyanza, in Luo Nyanza, mostly. In Mount Kenya region, Meru and the Central. In Karenjin, Rift Valley, you get 100% voter turnout. You know why? Because of the fact that if EVID does not work, and if you ask me, the commission needs to be very clear that without biometric you will not vote. If you look at the audit report, it says clearly that as per the data collected, only 92,000 we found that they were registered who are dead. And they are projecting, if you look at the data, over 1 million people died. Now, how come that has not been claimed?
Yes. Because
we don't have that data. How do we ensure that those people don't vote? People have to vote. People have to be identified biometrically.
But what about those the argument that some people who probably pick tea or work in construction sites have their fingerprints messed up?
If you registered with biometric, what has happened that they've gone? You know, those are defeatist thinking, so that we ensure that we bring in people. You know, we want if only 50% turned out to vote in a particular area. Because that is about democracy. One man, one vote. One woman, one vote. Absolutely. Those stories for, you know, backup system, I was picking tea.
On that note, Mark, let me stop you there.